to Steve Paul Hafner. Hey, there's a name from the past. The guy at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch who got us all the great coverage on the 1992 tour in St. Louis, Missouri. And I always wonder is Steve Paul Hafner still out there? So I guess Steve Paul Hafner is still out there.
Oh yeah, Steve's really active on the Facebook group. He drops by a muck every now and then and comments. So yeah, Steve's still out there. In fact, when the Judith thing blew up, and we had the talk and we did the please hold. Afterward, he commented going, "That was that girl," because he was driving you and her around St. Louis at the stop. Yeah. The weekend you guys broke up, and he's like, and all of a sudden he's like, "Now that I know."
Now I know. Yes, it's that was definitely a very interesting situation all the way around. And yes, Steve was there for all of that. So Steve, well, that's good. I had no idea that he was still that actively engaged. Before it was 300 issues, it was 26 years. And that wouldn't even have been a round number. I believe 156 was the original goal. Yes, it was. When I thought I was still going to be doing it bi-monthly, it was going to go until March 2003. And just because my math was bad, it was not a happy day when I figured out that 300 issues is going to go until March 2004. Finding out that you've got another year on your 26-year prison term, not a happy day. So obviously there's something important about 26 years. Yes, I would agree with that. What was it? That I don't know. Why was it important to do Cerebus for 26 years? There's a comic art metaphysics answer to that. There's a borderlands between male and female answer for that. I don't know how much of either of those I was doing consciously. I think we talked about this before a little bit. The fact that it's Bran McMuffin who says to Cerebus in issue 5, "How old are you?" And Cerebus says something like, that's for me to know and you to find out. And he says, "You're 26 years old," and that got established. That Cerebus turned 27, I believe, in issue 12. So one of the things that I was doing was saying, I want this character to actually age, and I don't know, it's not going to be month for month, because that would be a weird continuity thing to do, but it is Cerebus is going to be a specific age in specific times, and I wanted to establish that early on. Why I had Cerebus be 26 when I was 22, that I don't know. Why I would create a character that was older than I was is an interesting thing to do. I just realized a little while ago, Denny was 26 at the time that Cerebus was 26, which is another interesting thing. Why are you making your character the same age as your wife instead of your same age? And part of that might have been I already knew that Cerebus was going to be a hermaphrodite, or as they call it now, intersex. Um, so I don't know how consciously I did that. Let's make Cerebus Denny in terms of how old he is, rather than Cerebus Dave in terms of how old Dave is. The 26 years gets a little substantially more interesting because I found out many years later on that my mother was conceived out of wedlock. She was born in December 1930 and was conceived in March of 1930. And I found out years and years and years later on that my maternal grandmother and grandfather were married in May of 1930. So my grandmother was already 2 months pregnant when they got married. What I found out years after that was that they were married on May 17th, 1930. So consequently, I was born on their 26th wedding anniversary. And they never celebrated or talked about their wedding anniversary because of the baked-in out of wedlock thing. You didn't. If you have a daughter born in December 1930, you don't want people to know that you were married in May of 1930. So it must have been a very interesting thing all the way around, where my mother and my grandfather and my grandmother. I don't know if my father even knew when I was born on their 26th wedding anniversary. And of course, I didn't know that while I was doing all of this age 26 and 26 years stuff and having Cerebus last, excuse me, for 26 years and 3 months. So no explanation of how all of that fits together except in terms of comic art metaphysics, that I'm going to be this kid born on your 26th wedding anniversary is going to have a lot to say about a lot of different stuff, and it's going to take him 26 years to do it.
Wasn't there? I swear there was an interview where somebody asked you about why 300 issues, why 26 years, and I thought it tied into a comic creator that worked for 26 years.
It was definitely, I wanted a finite career, and it was Hal Foster with Prince Valiant, who said that the last few Prince Valiant strips that he did were lousy. So when you're Hal Foster, you know when you're at the top of your game and when your work is lousy. So that was definitely filed away in my mind. I don't want to still be doing Cerebus when I can't do it properly anymore. So I don't want to have the last few issues of Cerebus be lousy because I just don't know how to draw at that level anymore. So that was why it had to be finite. But then no one actually having done that before in the comic book field, it was up to me to decide, okay, going by my internal yardstick and my internal slide rule, I'm going to have to guess when do I want to be stopping doing Cerebus. And that was what I decided was, okay, I think if I had been Hal Foster, I would probably have said, better to try and knock off at in my late 40s rather than even carrying on into my 50s, just in case. Okay, where are you at your peak creative abilities? And it seemed to me that it might be a 60s thing as opposed to a 50s thing. It's really a matter of when you're laboring to do your best possible work, which is what we all do when we're young hotshots. You don't realize what a problem you're posing for your future self. Just reading more stuff about Wally Wood. Darrell Epps sent me a long piece by Ralph Reese, who was one of Woody's assistants and a wonderful cartoonist in his own right. And Wally Wood definitely did that to himself. I mean, he was so pedal to the metal, doing really, really brilliant work and doing it on deadline through his 20s and 30s and 40s, and then particularly with the alcoholism, definitely got to the point where he was sick of hearing how much everybody preferred his earlier work to what he was doing in his 40s and 50s. But that's one of those things that you do to yourself unless you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do and this is how long I'm going to do it. If you're laboring to compete with Frazetta and Al Williamson and Graham Ingalls and everybody at EC, you want to be the top EC artist, and then you go on to do work on Mad Magazine, and you want to be the best commercial illustrator that Bill Gaines has for Mad Magazine. That's really, you're really setting up a challenge for yourself that's almost impossible to meet. So that's why I decided, okay, I want to be at my absolute best when Cerebus is coming to an end. That sounds to me like a mid to late 40s thing rather than a 50s thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm just thinking.
I hope that while Steve's listening to this, that when I come to the end of that, when he comes to the end of that, he goes, "Okay, that's what I was asking about."
Well, I'm just thinking about. I mean, like Jack Kirby and Will Eisner, and there are guys that went well into their late 60s and even 70s, and I'm like, but then again, that's Jack had that drive of if I don't draw, the kids don't eat, and I mean like when you read about Jack going into the service in the 40s and he did like 1,000 pages that they could print while he was gone. Right,
and Jack had a very specific style that. I mean, the impact of it. Nobody drew comics like Jack Kirby, and he trained himself to draw in a specific style that he could do quickly, and could certainly pencil a lot more pages than he could pencil in ink. So he became a penciler, and he could lay out pages faster than he could pencil. Just the sheer volume of work that he did, it all looked like Jack Kirby, and it was, he wasn't, nothing against Jack Kirby, but he wasn't trying to figure out how do I do the best possible Jack Kirby artwork in my 40s and 50s. In his 20s, he was going, what's the best way to draw so that I could do this stuff really, really fast. I have to do a style where I can do 5 pages a day, like 5 finished pages a day, or 4 finished pages a day. When he and Joe Simon had their studio together, Jack Katz talked very, very specifically about trying out to work in the Simon and Kirby shop, and it's like the stuff is good. You know, you're able to do style, but you're just not fast enough. Like we need guys who can do this stuff unbelievably fast, because that's how we make money here, is doing complete comic books and turning them around like a complete comic book in a week. That's very, very different from what Will Eisner was doing, and very, very different from what Hal Foster was doing. Will didn't actually draw a lot of the spirit stuff when he had his studio put together by the late 1940s. It was all guys who were huge Will Eisner fans doing their best Will Eisner, and he, you know, did work on it, but was definitely, you know, working with young hotshot kids who wanted to do Will Eisner work. And when he did come back and do graphic novels, when he came back in the 1970s, that was a completely different thing. That was, okay, this is what I have to say as an artist. I'm not trying to figure out how to crank pages. I'm trying to figure out what's the best possible Will Eisner style to communicate the kind of work that I want to do. That you know, I want to be the Norman Mailer of graphic novelists, and I want to do stories that you know, Saul Bellow and people like that are doing in novels, but I want to do them as graphic novels. That's a very different thing, and was a completely different style. So you're really comparing apples and oranges in that situation, and you've got to be very, very careful to do that. And it is something that every cartoonist has to decide for themselves. I mean, I was somebody who went, no, Cerebus is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do Cerebus and a bunch of other stuff. I'll maybe do a few things on the outside, but not a lot of things on the outside, because, yes, I definitely want this to be done at this level of ability, and I want the last issues to be much, much better than the first issues, and at a definite creative peak. And most guys don't do that. Most guys, you know, if you'll pay me to draw Spider-Man, that's great. I'll draw Spider-Man for this length of time, and then when you don't want me to draw Spider-Man anymore, then I'll figure out something else I want to do. But they're not, most guys don't decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and this is, I'm going to do it as a graphic novelist. I'm going to do 16 graphic novels around this character, and it's going to be a 6,000-page story. That's a completely different decision-making process.
Right. It's one of those, you know, you're going to do 6,000 pages. You could do 6,000 pages of one character you own 100%, and, you know, every page is, this is pretty much the page I want to put out in the world. Or you can do 6,000 pages and half of them are, you know, filler Batman stories.
Right.
And the smarter answer in the long run, if you want to make a lot of money, is Batman. But if you want to have a career and when you look back going, I have 6,000 pages and I own them all and I own everything that's on every single one of them, that's self-publishing. And it's one of those, I could see guys, coming into the field going, 6,000 pages is 6,000 pages. What does it matter? Well, ask the guys who have 6,000 pages they've drawn and they've only ever seen the original art for 100 of them afterward.
Right, right. Or they only own X number of intellectual property. I mean, nobody knows what was deep inside Steve Ditko contemplating Spider-Man after he left, because you would know the difference. Like Spider-Man was a phenomenon pretty much right from the beginning. The Fantastic Four was the first 1960s Marvel superhero title, but Spider-Man became the Marvel flagship, and Steve Ditko looking at that, going, okay, well, if whatever level of curiosity he had of what is it like to be Siegel and Schuster and know that you created Superman? Well, now you know. You're Steve Ditko and you created Spider-Man, and same kind of deal. You're in that Spawn 10 situation where the character is behind those bars over there, and you've got a hood over your head and your hands tied behind your back in a specific sense. You have to realize at all times that can happen to you anytime that you're signing on the bottom line and saying, yeah, I understand that I don't own this, but they're willing to pay me $45 a page or $60 a page to draw this, and hey, this is turning into a relatively long time gig. This is 3 years in, and usually I get the phone call saying, stop drawing the book, it's been canceled. It's just, we got the sales figures in on the first 5 issues, and we're not keeping it going. But hey, we gave it our best shot. Come on into the office, and we'll talk about other stuff that you can work on. It's, Marvel Wolfman with Blade, Steve Gerber with Howard the Duck. You don't know when you're creating something what that reaction is going to be, and the situation of the character being trapped behind the bars and you on these sides of the bars, and you're never going to get those two things together again under any circumstances. It does happen. It definitely does happen.
I'm just thinking about having just read Men of Tomorrow, which is the story of Siegel and Schuster. I come back to Funny Man. We're gonna make Superman again, and this time we're gonna own it, and it got canceled after like 3 issues because it wasn't Superman.
Right. Yeah. You only get one of them. I mean, I did know that as a creator, which is why I made the choices that I made with Cerebus, because it's like, okay, nothing has compared to this that I've worked on. The Beavers was nothing like this. Revolt 3000 was nothing like this. This is getting definite traction. This is definitely getting reaction from people. And I did tell myself, if that happens, stick with that thing and make sure that you always own it, and put your time in on that. Don't put your time in on something else that you can make good short-term money on. Don't stop doing Cerebus to write Howard the Duck just because Marvel asks you, do you want to write Howard the Duck? It's like, I don't own Howard the Duck, and I do own Cerebus, so that's where I'm putting my time in on. And everybody has different choices that they make in that situation.